I think we're ready to start. I know there will be a slow trickle in of other folks. To the Great Salt Lake Tech Team meeting. This is about a quarterly meeting where we have researchers come together and share ongoing work about Great Salt Lake. And we have a special contingent here who has never been here before. So we usually start by going around and doing introductions. But before we do that, can we have someone, like a spokesperson for this group, talk about who's here, who's not usually here, and why?
Okay. All right, that works. So my name is Scott Henick, and I work for the USGS, Utah Water Science Center. Regularly attend tech team meetings, but I brought a contingent with me today. So we have some delegations from Argentina and Bolivia, people that we've been working with for a while. That are visiting, and they come to Salt Lake periodically, and the purpose of this trip is to understand about mineral resources on Great Salt Lake, regulation, environmental assessment, and with a special focus on the proposed facility on the North Arm for direct extraction of lithium, DLE. So we'll be going out there tomorrow to meet with Waterleaf, Lilac, and so this is kind of an ongoing collaboration. We have some legal folks from the Commerce Department who typically join us, and the Department of the Interior, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. We're here to not be a circus, but to just see how you guys do business, Angela.
Great. Well, welcome. We're gonna kick this off. Bonnie, you want to start with just your name and affiliation?
Mm-hmm. Bonnie Baxter, Great Salt Lake Institute, Westminster University.
I'm Angela Gong, Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. Oh, you have your own mic. I don't know.
I'm John Luft. I'm the Great Salt Lake Ecosystem Program Coordinator with the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources.
Elliot, you want to go next?
Elliot Jagnecki with Utah Geological Survey.
Okay. Christine Rumsey, hydrologist with the USGS Utah Water Science Center.
Good morning. My name is Franz Kolb. I am the director of the Center of International Business and Diplomacy in the State of Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. One of our purposes is to promote trade, international trade. We hosted a delegation from Argentina a couple of weeks ago, and we are very grateful for our collaboration with the beautiful country of Argentina. I'm originally from Austria, and I just would like to let our guests know that Austria is going to play Argentina in soccer here in the next couple of weeks, and it's like the dwarf against the giant. So that's all I can say. But we are very grateful to. I've been in my position for over 30 years, and we are looking forward to potentially have a delegation go down to Buenos Aires and to Argentina in August. And so I want to wish you a very warm welcome here. And if there's anything that we can do, we are grateful to the Department of Natural Resources and all my colleagues here with the state. So welcome.
My name is Anna Maiden. I work with Franz Kolb at the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and we were so thrilled, as Franz said, to welcome an Argentinian delegation just a little while ago. We're very excited to have you back in the state. It's so great to see all of you, and thank you so much for our colleagues at DNR hosting this amazing delegation. It's really nice to meet all of you. Thank you.
I'm Dana Dean. I'm the Deputy Director of the Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining over mining, and that includes brine production.
Great, let's come back here.
Jim Harris with the Division of Water Quality. I'm the Water Quality Coordinator for the Great Salt Lake.
Burke Riggs. I'm a professor of law at Washburn University School of Law in Kansas. I specialize in water, so I'm with Scott in the CLDP group.
Good morning. Emma Whitaker. I'm with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, and I'm the Lands Operations Manager.
I'm Jake Alexander. I'm with the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, and I'm the Minerals Operations Manager, managing minerals on the Great Salt Lake.
Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Federico Martínez y soy parte de la Secretaría de Minería de la República Argentina.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Leandro Pirraglia y trabajo en el Servicio Geológico de Nación de Argentina.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Daniel Herrera y trabajo en la Secretaría de Minería de la provincia de Salta.
Buenos días, soy Virginia Maggio y trabajo en la Secretaría de Minería de la provincia de Salta.
Hi, I'm Georgie Corkery. I'm with Great Salt Lake Institute at Westminster University.
Hi, Mike Pechtel, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Hi, my name is Aspen Johnston. I'm with the Office of the Great Salt Lake Commissioner as the Strategic Coordinator.
Hi, I'm Ted Balling. I'm with Forestry, Fire, and State Lands, so I'm a water rights specialist.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Juan Martín Isla, de la Secretaría de Minería de la Nación.
Hello, I am Marcelo Claros. I am from Argentina, de Jujuy.
Hola, buen día a todos. Mi nombre es Osvaldo Córdoba, de la provincia de Jujuy.
Buen día para todos. Mi nombre es Teresita Regalado. Estoy a cargo del Ministerio de Minería de la provincia de Catamarca, Argentina.
Buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Soy Raúl Colombo, abogado del Ministerio de Minería de Catamarca, Argentina.
Good morning, I'm Dolores Álvarez, and I'm from the Geological and Mining Survey of Argentina.
¿Cómo están? Muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Seila Catacora, vengo de Bolivia, trabajo en yacimientos de litio bolivianos, soy ingeniera química.
Hola, buenos días. Yo soy Claudia Ávila de Bolivia. Trabajo en el Ministerio de Hidrocarburos y Energías. Soy la directora general de Recursos Evaporíticos.
Hola, muy buenos días. Mi nombre es Edmilú Sánchez Pérez. Trabajo en la empresa Yacimientos de Litios Bolivianos en la planta carbonato de litio de Bolivia.
Hi, I'm Brian Veru. I'm a permit lead with the Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having us today. My name is Kara Molnar, and I'm with the Commercial Law Development Program of the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Thank you. Likewise, I want to express my gratitude for welcoming our group. My name is Olivia Sierra. I'm a Senior Project Manager with the U.S. Department of the Interior. Thank you.
We've got some amazing translation happening back here. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Rosemary Garcia Prieto, interpreter for this delegation.
And Gerardo Cáceres, also interpreter.
Thank you. Did we miss anyone? Great. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. This is a special meeting. Thank you for being here. A couple of announcements or updates to kick us off. The first update I want to share is that working? Can you hear me? The first update I want to share is several months ago, we awarded the tech team grants. However, and I think we sent out a public notice, but we didn't post it to our website, so some of you all may not know. So I just wanted to share the grantees that were awarded for the fiscal year 27, and some of them are 2 years, so also fiscal year 28 grants. So here are the grantees for fiscal year 27, and then 2 of them are 2 years. So Sageland Collaborative is continuing their amazing work with the Intermountain Shorebird survey. The team thought this was a really important continuous data set and wanted to continue to support that. Christine Rumsey, who's here with us today, and her advisor, Brenda Bowen at the U, are refining seasonal predictions for salinity in the South Arm and salt mass, and that's pretty relevant to what we're looking at today as well, so we might hear a little bit about that. Danielle Aziz and his team is heading a multi-agency effort to look at lake evaporation and refine that modeling. It's one of the biggest question marks in how water is moving in and out of Great Salt Lake. So we're excited to get more refined data on that. And then Karen Kettering at USU is taking about the last 10, 15 years of work that she's done with revegetation of Great Salt Lake wetlands and making it so it's much more accessible for decision makers around the lake. Wetland managers, private landowners, upland, who are trying to figure out after frag what next. So some tools to help people look at that. If you take a look at the total funding, we awarded about $370,000. Usually we award $500,000. So I just wanted to take a moment to explain this. You remember that last year we started accepting both 1 and 2 year projects. And so this is the end of year 1 of the first time we've done 2 year projects. So at our meeting in September, I'd like to spend a little time doing a little bit of a post-mortem. How did that go? What do we need to adjust something? So hearing about that. So usually it's $500,000, but what we've done the past 2 years is split it across 2 years. So we've awarded $250,000 of this year, and then we awarded $250,000 of next year's funds, and then it layered on. So this year we had the other $250,000 to award for this coming fiscal year, and then $250 for the year after that. What happened with this was it was kind of interesting, just the way the projects fell out. We awarded all $250 for fiscal year 27. We maxed out the funding for this coming year, but just the way the funding was spread across these projects for year 1 and year 2, we only awarded, whatever the rest of it is, $119,000 for fiscal year 28. So what it looks like is, what we did is we ended up awarding less money than normal because there was more money left in year 2 in fiscal year 28 than we, had thought there might be. So the bad news is, it looks like a lower amount this year. The good news is next year, when we open the grant process, which will be this fall for fiscal year 28 projects, 27, 28. Wait, I'm losing track of my years. 28. We will be able to award more money than normal because we'll have extra money in next year's pot, if that makes sense. If you have questions about that, let me know. A couple other updates. From me, Great Salt Lake Advisory Council is having its, I'm not sure what the official term for this is, but in its statute, it has a sunset that unless it's renewed, it will sunset. So it's having its sunset hearing at the Natural Resources Interim Subcommittee meeting in May. So if you're interested in that, you can talk to me about more details. They're just hearing about what the work that it's done and thinking about how it looks going forward. One other update, the Salinity Advisory Council, we bumped the meeting from this Thursday to the 27th. It's a Wednesday at the end of the month. And we're going to be looking at it'll be a continuation of the conversation that we'll be having today with Christine and Gary, which is a really important look at how nutrients are moving in the lake. So this is sort of an emerging issue that most of us are new to. So we're diving to that in the Salinity Advisory Council meeting and really thinking about implications for the berm this year. So come to that. That's going to be a winner. Are there any other updates that anyone would like to share before we dive into today's presentations? Okay, great. Did I stop sharing? Okay, on our agenda today, we've got two folks. If you came to the Great Salt Lake Issues Forum last week, you got sort of a teaser for this. So today, Gary Belovsky from University of Notre Dame and Christine Rumsey from USGS are talking to us in more detail about what they've been seeing and calculating with nutrient flows in Great Salt Lake. So Gary should be online. And if you are, Gary, can you hear us? Can we hear you? Nope. Yeah. Gary, if it's okay with you, we will. Hey, now we see you. I mean, we can see your screen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The link you sent me only allowed me to listen. So.
Great. Now we've got you on, so we can hear you, and I will
Good.
share your slides that I've got here. Oh, where are they?
Do you want me to share my screen?
See if that's easier. It's just being quite slow for me.
Can you see that?
Nope.
It's not coming through.
Nope. Let's see. There we go. How about that? Can you see mine?
That's fine. I can see yours now.
Great. Okay, now. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, so you're going to control it.
Yes.
Right. Okay. All right. Can we have the next slide?
Yes, although it's not showing the right one. Hold, please.
Technology. All right. So over the last 3 years, we've conducted experiments to be able to do nutrient budgets within the south arm of the lake. And these experiments have dealt with looking at the decomposition rate, the fall rate through the water column, and how and the chemical composition of various biological materials in the lake. And with this, we've been able to put together nutrient budgets for the south arm of the lake. And a lot of the material ends up in the benthic zone, and that poses problems in terms of the release of that from the benthic zone into the water column. However, after doing all of the calculations and everything, next slide. The results are very promising. First, the budgets in the pelagic zone and the benthic zones are nearly balanced, which is what you'd expect. So in other words, the ecosystem is in some sort of, I don't want to say equilibrium, but at least on the short term, on an annual basis, it seems that you're releasing certain amounts of nutrients at the same rate that they're that they're being used up within the lake. Now, the most important nutrient, let me point out right now, is nitrogen. Nitrogen appears to be the limiting nutrient for phytoplankton production and for the production of the photosynthesis in the microbialite community. Now, this could change over time with phosphorus becoming a limiting nutrient, or both of them working in coordination to limit production. But at least at present, it seems nitrogen is the limiting nutrient. Next. Okay, we can test these results, and Christine, I'm sure, may be talking a little more about this. But if we look at from her experiments, the sedimentation in traps that she's put out in the lake for June and July, the amount of total dissolved nitrogen, or no, the mass that appears in the sediment traps that she's measuring is about 2.3 grams per meter squared per day. And just based on the fecal pellet snowfall from shrimp, Artemia in the lake, we calculate 1.9 grams per meter squared per day. And that term snowfall is from marine studies where they measure, it's the term they use for the sinking of fecal pellets from zooplankton in the water column. Next. When we observed the observed total dissolved nitrogen that Christine probably will be talking about today is 4.21 milligrams per liter. And the total dissolved nitrogen that the budget comes up with is 4.15 milligrams per liter. So we're getting similar results between what's being measured by U.S. Geological Survey and what the budget is estimating. Next. And the same thing can be observed for phosphorus, dissolved phosphorus. And we, the observation from USGS is 2.295 milligrams per liter, and the budget that we get is 0.26 milligrams per liter. So we were very pleased with these results. Next slide. Except one thing that we hadn't considered was because we thought that the south arm of the lake was basically a unit independent of the north arm of the lake. We did not include the transport of material between the south arm to the north arm and return of material from the north arm to the south arm. So this became a concern to us when we started thinking about the berm that had been constructed that restricted the movement of water from the south arm to the north arm, and particularly restricted the movement of water from the north arm to the south arm. Next slide. So this berm was constructed, and we can see that if we look at the ratio of the flow between north to south and south to north on the y-axis, and we look at measurements over time of that ratio, where we have complete annual measurements, monthly measurements of the flow, we can see that before the berm was constructed and took effect in 2023, that there was considerable flow exchange between the two arms of the lake. After the construction of that berm in 2022, and essentially its impact starting in 2023, the return flow from the north arm to the south arm was drastically reduced. Next slide. Well, looking at these data over time, or looking at data from the south arm of the lake over time, we were surprised in seeing that in 2024 to 2025, we got a dramatic decline in the annual chlorophyll A measurements for the lake. Prior to that time, you can see the green bars, we had higher chlorophyll A, and 2024 and 2025, we started to see a decrease in the chlorophyll A produced in the south arm of the lake. And this was bothersome. It's because this phytoplankton, chlorophyll A in the south arm, is what is driving the whole production within the pelagic zone. If we look at the chlorophyll A per cell in the phytoplankton, the green line shows by month what the chlorophyll content is of the phytoplankton cells. The brown line below points out what is the chlorophyll A per cell after the berm was constructed and started to change the flow rates. You can see that the cell chlorophyll A component is considerably reduced after the berm was put in place. Now, this berm was placed there to try to control the salinity in the south arm of the lake, which was getting too high under the current drought conditions. And this was important to maintain the productivity of that south arm ecosystem. However, the unanticipated consequence of this berm controlling salinity was to change the productivity in the south arm by returning the amount of nitrogen from the north arm to the south arm. Next slide. So constructing a simple back of the envelope calculations of flow of water between the south to the north arm, the green arrow, and the return from the north arm to the south arm. For the period without the berm, and then solving that, we saw that the equilibrium that was obtained in the south arm in terms of nitrogen per liter was matched up with what was predicted in the budget and very similar to what USGS was predicting or measuring in the south arm. And that's 4.15 milligrams per liter. However, if you look at the north arm, the nitrogen content in the north arm is 9.96 milligrams per liter. And USGS, and I'm sure Christine will be talking about this, USGS measurements come up with a value between 2 to 3 times greater nitrogen content in the north arm. Our estimate here on these back of the envelope calculations is about 2.4 times greater nitrogen content at 9.96 milligrams per liter.
set at the new breach. So this is, again, where that exchange is happening, where USGS heavily instruments this area to monitor both the discharge and concentrations of constituents so we can estimate the fluxes happening here. This is analysis done by Scott, so thank you for sharing your work here. These are total dissolved nitrogen concentrations. This is a plot of that. And the red dots indicate north to south concentrations from about 2017 to present. The green dots indicate south to north. And this is really just to illustrate the magnitude differences in concentrations between each of these arms of the lake. So in the south arm, on average, we have about 4.3 milligram per liter nitrogen. In the north arm, what's coming to the south, it's about 6.9 milligrams per liter. So about 1.5 times greater concentrations in the north arm coming back to the south than in what is leaving. So that north arm really packs a punch. It's more concentrated than the south arm water. And if we look at loads, so pairing those concentrations with a discharge estimate to get a mass flux, we can see, kind of just compare the pre and post berm modification time period. So prior to berm modification, which is right about here in summer of 2022, you can see how north to south and south to north fluxes tended to be a bit more in sync, or a bit more equal. After berm modification, when we really cut off that north arm flow, you can just see those go to zero. Essentially, there was no flow, nothing coming in. So we just see a really stark reduction in the flux at the new breach, as you might expect. So the pre-berm modification fluxes were on the order of 6 tons per day. After that, we're looking at less than 1 ton per day. And if we extrapolate those values on an annual basis, we're approaching about 2,000 ton per year reduction in nitrogen coming back into the south arm. If we do a similar exercise for total dissolved phosphorus, we can see that concentrations for total dissolved phosphorus in the north arm are higher than in the south, like you might expect, very similar for nitrogen. And pairing those with fluxes, we can see how prior to the berm modification, when we had bidirectional exchange, we were getting about 0.3 tons per day coming from north to south in phosphorus, and then after that, it really tapered off to almost nothing. And then looking at this a slightly different way, if we just look at the net nutrient flux, so comparing both what's going out and what's coming in, we can see after berm modification, shown in this salmon color, we had a greater nitrogen loss. That's kind of what that shift upward in the box plot indicates. We had more nitrogen loss to the north arm, as you might expect, because the fluxes coming back in were shut off, and we continue to export to the south. And if we kind of take an annual estimate of what that nitrogen reduction is, over a period of, well, I'll do it on an annual basis, and compare that to the mass in the south arm, so considering the resident nitrogen mass in the south arm as well as the volume, that we estimate that we get about a 0.1 to 0.2 milligram per liter nitrogen decrease in the south arm. So essentially extrapolating what's that flux at the breach to the entire south arm, what that would do to the resident salt mass, is kind of what you get, a 0.1 to 0.2 milligram per liter decrease in south arm nitrogen. Extrapolated over multiple years, because the effect of this is cumulative, it's about a 0.5 milligram per liter nitrogen decrease over kind of the last 3 years, which is in line with kind of what Gary had estimated, and also what we observed in the change in total dissolved nitrogen concentration after the berm was modified. So I'll just summarize kind of these exercises by saying we used 2 independent data sets. The first, using our nutrient data collected in the south arm to show or to estimate that there has been a statistically significant decrease in the nitrogen mass in the south arm after the berm was modified. And similarly, if we look at fluxes happening at the breach, we measure that there has just been a decrease in flux, or decrease in import of nitrogen coming in from the north arm. And moving forward, as Angela mentioned, this will be a topic of conversation in the next Salinity Advisory Committee. What we've done for salinity to help us track salinity, salt mass, and volume, and kind of integrate those variables, is to come up with a plot like this, which we call an isomass plot, where south arm elevation is shown on the y-axis, and we have a volume-weighted salinity estimate on the x-axis. And this kind of allows us to triangulate at any given time when we have more recent measurements, and say, okay, here's our salinity at a given time, here's our elevation, and here's our mass. putting that in the context of targets that have been identified. Currently, we're in a pretty good shape. With the target, our optimal range identified as 90 to 160 grams per liter, and we're sitting at about 120. So this framework allows us to kind of know where we are. It also helps us to predict where we might go, because as elevations go up for a given salt mass, we predict salinities will decrease as we move to the left on that y-axis and vice versa. If we're entering more of an evaporative season and elevations go down, we can predict where we might end up in terms of salinity. So this framework has been useful for salt, and it was requested by Salinity Advisory Committee that we kind of build something like this for nutrients. And so here's the first cut at that, is trying to get at our isomass plot for nutrients and exploring whether this framework is also useful for something like nutrients or any constituent that the state or others identify as important for trying to track and understand constituent fluxes and the status of mass in the South Arm. So similarly, we've got South Arm elevation on the y-axis and a volume weighted, in this case, total dissolved nitrogen concentration on the x-axis. And so the most recent data we have is from November 4th, so we can integrate where we were in terms of elevation, where we were in terms of the nitrogen concentration and the mass. So integrating kind of these three variables that have been helpful for the Salinity Advisory Committee and Division of Forestry, Fire and State Lands as they try to manage the exchange, the mass fluxes of various constituents in the South Arm. And so as a first cut, looking at this for nutrients, where we currently sit is kind of in the middle of the range of total dissolved nitrogen concentrations. And so this is actually something that I would love to explore with Gary or others who are interested, is that we've been here before. These total dissolved nitrogen concentrations are not anomalously low. They're kind of middle of the road. And so in the past, where we've had similar total dissolved nitrogen concentrations, what has been the effect on the biota? Because we're kind of, from what I can tell, not at an extremely low nitrogen concentration relative to what we've measured in the past. In terms of mass in the South Arm, it does seem to me like we're kind of in the lower end of that distribution. If we sort of look at where we've been in the past, around 30 to 35,000 tons, now we're sitting at around 30,000. So that does look different, and statistically is significantly lower. And then, of course, we are at the low end of a distribution in terms of lake elevation. So this is just an initial framework to help us wrap our brain around this new constituent, extending management considerations to more than just salt. I'm not sure if this will be useful yet, but it's a first stab at something that might be. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or clarify anything that might have been confusing.
Thank you, Christine. Questions?
I got one. So we've, I think, arrived at, for salt, if you were to take one annual observation that you were going to use for long-term trends, that you would use October, November to look at the total dissolved salt mass, because it would incorporate the cumulative effects of runoff and then strong evaporation. I'm wondering if there is a time of the year, given that nitrogen is so reactive, the salt is too in this system, I guess, but is there a time if there was one sample a year that you could use to look at long-term trends, would it be the same or different?
Good question. I guess I'll just start by saying, working with these data, they are much noisier than a salt concentration or a salt mass estimate. So that's, for starters, the data set is more variable. And as you mentioned, it's more reactive. So inorganic nitrogen is exchanging with the biota, decomposition is happening, things are changing, deep brine layer affects these things. I don't know yet. I think that it would be similar, probably fall, just because you remove hydrological variables, that variance there. But I think we need to work with Gary and other biologists to really kind of home in on a time of year where we would think those would be more stable. I will also say this initial framework that I have shared with you today is integrating the entire water column. So this volume weighted concentration that I share is really including anything that might have historically been sequestered in the deep brine layer. And perhaps a more relevant framework would actually be only looking at the concentration in the upper brine layer and how that changes through time. And that's something we can easily do, but I didn't have a chance to do that. So I guess I'll just answer by saying I don't know, and there's additional considerations that we haven't really had to dive into for salt that we will for nutrients, and I think we should do that pretty carefully.
Quick question out of curiosity. Do we know the nitrogen coming out of West Davis water treatment?
I believe they're measuring it, but we have not analyzed those data. And in fact, it perhaps would be a worthwhile exercise for us to update the kind of mass balance that Hannah did and include that outflow. But no, we haven't looked at that yet. Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of questions online. Alex?
Hey, Christine.
Hey,
Alex Phillips, Duke University. Really fascinating results. I'm really interested to see how this progresses. I'm curious if these nitrogen concentration data are available from like the whole time range, like through 2025 up on USGS website right now?
They're not. So a complicating factor in this has been that we switched labs because the USGS laboratory decided no longer to analyze hypersaline nutrients. So in about 2023, sorry, long story, but they essentially, we've been in the middle of a transition into using a new laboratory, which is not an insignificant task because we're dealing with hypersaline water, as you know. And so we have been doing a pretty rigorous evaluation of this new laboratory. We've been doing a number of comparisons and doing a lot of additional analytical requests in terms of spike recoveries and everything. And so I say that all to say we have not published it publicly because we've been really busy trying to verify this new data set. We're close to doing that. We're close to wrapping that up, and we hope that by the end of the summer we will load all of our data into water quality portal so that it will be available to everyone.
Fantastic. And then you already touched on this, I think, but I just wanted to double check because I'm not as used to thinking about dissolved nutrient species, but this is measuring just like dissolved nitrate, nitrite, and ammonia, and it does not count things that are like currently locked up inside biomolecules, correct?
This would. So this total dissolved nitrogen metric does include organic and inorganic forms of nitrogen.
And phosphorus?
We do have phosphorus, yes, too, also.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, and the dissolved fraction is 0.45 microns. 0.45, yeah.
Gary, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, just Scott's question about picking a time of the year that is most instructive in terms of the nitrogen value. I think a couple cautions here. One is because of the problems of measuring nitrogen in the hypersaline water, we're talking about total dissolved nitrogen, and biologically the most important is the inorganic nitrogen, and those measurements are not as good because of the oftentimes they come in beyond they can't be detected. They're below the criteria for detection. And so total dissolved nitrogen is being used because that is more easily measured. Second of all, the problem that you face with a time of the year is that the phytoplankton are very productive in the winter time often before without grazing by the shrimp. And as a result, that's critical, and that helps to go into how much you're going to have into the spring and early summer as the shrimp population starts to grow. But that also, you need to know the nitrogen at other months because that's when the phytoplankton is recovering from being fed upon. So trying to pick a particular time that's most important, I think, is much more difficult than the salinity question.
I'll just add that in the winter months, there's a lot of chlorophyll, but when we measure carbon assimilation, it's very low. So Photosynthesis, like most biochemistry, works very slowly when it's cold. So that we shouldn't equate presence of chlorophyll with actual metabolism.
Let me just point out the metabolism isn't necessarily the key. It's the population that is the food resource for the grazer. So,
that's absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you both for these sort of different perspectives on the same issue that we're looking at. This is really interesting, been a helpful conversation. Come back to the Salinity Advisory Committee meeting for more at the end of the month. Ben made the joke that we're considering calling it the Salinity and Nutrient Advisory Committee, which is snack.
All for snacks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. I know that for our visitors here today, the specific content might not have been exactly relevant to the problems you're working on, but are there any questions about the tech team in general or about the lake more broadly that anyone in this room might speak to?
So one thing so you guys, please, this would be an opportunity to speak with people. And I believe the plan is still to stay in here and continue some conversations, but I'm not sure, Angela. But so one of the things that I wanted everyone to understand is this is a public meeting, and this is how discussions and management of this resource sort of evolve. This is one of them. So just consider that. And then I'd also like to point out Bonnie over here, who's done a lot of work. You can tell the people who are actively engaged in the science here. And so she's at a university in town. Gary's at a university someplace else. And it's also just really, I think, really important to understand the number of different entities that share a common interest and how science and management advances in this system. So anyway, have at it, please. If you have some thoughts or anything about this system or the governance you're kind of observing.
Okay, great. Well, no pressure right now, but as the meeting wraps up, you can stay and chat with any individuals that you'd like to. And I also neglected at the beginning of the meeting to acknowledge that we have a lot of folks online who are listening in and can participate. I always feel self-conscious reading people's names, but there's Alex P. Gary, of course, is remote. Manjo Masson. Sarah Null. Andrew Upkey. Ben Starman. Joe Havasi. Heidi Hoven. Oh, I think these people actually are online. Anyway, so we have some folks online who are here. Last thing before we wrap up, I reached my 1.5 year mark in my position this week. And so, thank you. And so one of the things I wanted to do is, this has been a long-standing meeting series that has been going on, far longer than I was here, and I think even before my immediate predecessor was here. And one thing I just want to do is do a pulse check on how this meeting is being useful for folks. So I'm going to drop into hang on a second. I'm going to share my screen. And then also drop into the chat a tiny URL or what's that thing called? A QR code to a short survey that just has about 10, 15 questions about what you think the purpose of Tech Team is, what the purpose is for you, and then just some questions about the content, about the format, and about the takeaways that might make this meeting more useful to you in general. So if this is your first and only time here, you don't have to worry about filling this out. But I'll also send this out in the email so that folks can fill this out. And what I'd like to do is just get some feedback about what's working, what's not working, what could we tweak to make this more useful or a better meeting for you. So what I'd like you to do right now is, whether you're online or in person, I want you to open this, because what will happen is if we don't do it right now, I know what will happen. It's what happens to me when people ask me to fill out surveys, which is I forget about it. So go ahead and open it. I'm going to give you like 2 or 3 minutes to start it. If you don't finish, that's fine. But at least then it's started, and then the next time you open your phone, it'll be there. I just also dropped it into the chat for the Google Meet. So take about 2-3 minutes to go through as much as you can of it. We'll play soft lobby music. This is also anonymous, so if you have mean things to say about it, I won't know it's you.
Sure, I gotta go back and change my answer.
Bless you. Okay, the responses are starting to come in. I know many of you are not done. But as you finish up, I will just open the meeting up for any public comment that anyone in the room or online would like to make. Anyone? This is usually where Lynn stands up and announces the issues forum.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of you for coming to the Great Salt Lake Issues Forum last week. And the entire 3-day program has been recorded. And that video of all of the presentations will be posted on the forum website probably within the next week or 10 days at the most. So if you missed something or you'd like to revisit a particular presentation, it'll be there for you. So thank you so much. I do have cookies. There you go.
That was a great vet plan. Anyone else have a public comment? Anyone online? I didn't hear any hands up. Okay, great. With that, we are a wrap today. Our next tech team meeting is on September 8th. So, end of summer, beginning of fall. Thank you so much. Feel free to stay and chat and mingle.